So our guest that we're going to have on this evening, Keith Christmas. I've known Keith for a while now. It was a couple of years ago that I had the opportunity to spend some time with him. We were away on some annuity training, and I got to know Keith back then. And one thing that I know about Keith, the guy is in this business, and he's got 6 kids. And I hear people all the time that come into this business. I have 1 kid, and they got every excuse in the world as to what's going on with 1 child. This guy's got 6. I had an opportunity to talk to him a little bit earlier today, and I asked him one thing. I said, as long as you've been in this business, all the ups and downs, it all happens it happens to all of us. How were you able to keep your head on straight and keep pushing forward, and then still have that belief that FFL is the best company in this industry, and just keep pushing forward and so positive about everything that's going on? He said, Mike, I'll break it down like this. I'll attribute it to one thing, and that's my faith, my belief in God. And then he read a scripture that I won't even try to quote what he said, because I'll butcher it. But we all go through stuff, especially the longer that you're in this business, and then especially when you start trying to build an agency, we all get kicked in the teeth. But the things that he has been through, and talking to him today, he's just as positive as the day that I met him. I love talking to people like that. I love talking to people each and every day that don't complain about what's going on, but are looking for a solution and positive about the future and excited about where things are going. And that's kind of who Keith Christmas is. And I'm excited to have him on our call. He's absolutely phenomenal at not only final expense sales, but mortgage protection sales. He can train anyone on how to come into the business and work old leads, new leads. But I'm really excited to have him come on. And Keith, before you come on and introduce yourself and your background, I'd also like you to tell people the story. I don't remember the whole story, but it was something about your sister-in-law was in the business, and you guys took some $2 or $3 leads and went to a state, and you were able to write $12,200 on $2 leads. I'm sure everyone here would like to be able to do that. But now I know that you're working a lot of newer leads, and the new thing at FFL, which is working tremendously, is the social media mortgage leads. Those leads are absolutely crushing right now. So Keith, if you can unmute yourself, come on, introduce yourself, and then let's get down to some training and show people how to close a lot of mortgage protection.
Hey, Mike, appreciate you and Frank having me on, man. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great, loud and clear, bud.
Hey, it's an honor. It's humbling. I remember when I first started, I didn't know a lick of anything. We didn't have calls like this, or if they did, I wasn't aware of that. I do believe there's strength in numbers. Iron sharpens iron. We all can learn from one another. I learned from my children, and they're like, little ones, but we can learn from each other. So going back to what you were asking about with my sister-in-law, my wife's little sister bought some leads in Louisville, Kentucky. This was a couple years ago, but I had an annuity client that was referred to me by the guy's father, and his son wanted to do something similar to what I did for him. So I got licensed in Kentucky, had never worked Kentucky, and her and I went, and I got us both hotel rooms. She was on like the second floor, I was on third floor. And that night I got on Google Voice or something, one of those apps, Sideline, Smartline, one of these different phone apps, and got me a local phone number for Louisville, Kentucky. So when I called them, I could call them, it'd show up local. Next morning, she comes to my room, had printed off, I don't know, 100, 200 leads, whatever it was, that she bought. They were $2 leads. They were like 2 years old, 3 years old. And we sorted them out by county. I took one county and gave her the majority of them because I was there for my annuity client. But I said, while I'm here, I might as well try to scratch on some old leads. I actually went to the hotel room's bathroom on the counter and had my leads spread out. And I called through 28 and I booked, I believe it was 8, and they were 2 years plus old. And I sold like, 12,200 on top of the annuity guy that I had to go meet there. If I can do it, anyone can do it, guys. I'm not anything special. I've probably failed more than everybody on this call combined. But because of the failure, I've had success because I've learned from mistakes. And I'm comfortable with old mortgage. I started in the industry in 2017, March of that year, the end of March. And I got into this personally because one of my friends passed away, didn't have mortgage protection. And that's what got me looking into it for myself. One thing led to another, and I became an agent.
Did you hit
But
Hall
I
of
ended
Fame
up
that year, Keith?
do what?
Did you hit Hall of Fame that year?
No, I was one of the top rookies that year, but I only worked like 8.5 months. I
Got it.
didn't hit it
Okay.
that year. I'm usually a 30 to 40K producer monthly at my schedule. I wish I could burn the candle like some of your monster hitters here and run 7 days a week or whatnot. But with my dynamic, I kind of make the schedule work for me, and I've learned to be efficient with the time I have. Best I can anyway. But to go with aged mortgage, that's what we had. We didn't have we didn't have Facebook final expense. We didn't have the internet leads and some of the telemarketing mortgage leads and all the different things that we have now, the lead vendors. When I started, you either locked out a county with FFL and you got, the leads for that county or counties, or you got aged mortgage leads, or, you were kind of cold calling or whatever. So I went through our CRM and bought leads. They were like $3 leads. I'd buy 100 of them a week and just hammer through those. If you're not very good on the phones, I'm a big proponent of trying any aged leads, whether it's through FFL's CRM or getting them from a lead vendor, an aged lead, because when you have a cheap lead, you can fall on your face and mess up, especially when you have a number of them. I just gave an agent in Myrtle Beach. I'm in Charleston, South Carolina. I gave an agent 2.5 hours away from me before this call 102-year-old mortgage leads for the county that he's in from one of the lead vendors I work with. And I was like, hey, he might book 15, 20 of them, but I told him, I was like, you go through it, you're going to get your feel, you're going to get your rhythm, you're going to mess up. But when it's a $2, $3 lead, Mike, and you get cussed out, or you fumble the words, or you just don't know what to say and they hang up on you, you're like, dude, I got 99 more leads to call. You start getting comfortable by getting uncomfortable, we always say, right? And so if it's a $70 mortgage lead and you screw up on that, then you feel a lot worse. And to me, it's not the leads so much as learning what to say in phone script and whatnot on those leads. And that's kind of what I learned from trial and error. I was saying the right things on the training, at least the training that they taught me for phone script, but I was saying it in the wrong way. So, and I've told you this before on another call, if you can say the right things, but if your tone is not matching what it's supposed to be, your tone is equally, if not more important than what you say, in my opinion. If I was fluent in multilingual, bilingual, other languages, and I could speak German and French is considered a love language, Mike. If I told you something in German, something to my wife romantic, or something that sounded good, the language in German doesn't sound as appealing to the ear. But if I cussed you out in French, it actually sounds nicer because the tone. And so I tell this to people all the time. With my children, I could yell at them and say, I love you, or I could say it sincerely. I can say I love you both ways, but one of them is going to be received more because the tone in which I say it. So your tone is important, especially with any lead type. But aged leads, I find that my tone I had to work on that. And once I figured out the tone and what I said, and I was assertive and I was to the point and I had the good script that worked for me, I found I got more appointments because of what I was saying and how I was saying it. So I'm going to give you all the script real quick that works for me. I know other teams have shared it. I'm not saying this is the only way or the best way. I'm saying what's worked for me. So y'all take it with a grain of salt. If I'm calling an aged lead, I'll grab a lead right here. And I say, this person's name's Charles. And I'll call, they'll pick up, and I'll say, hey, is this Charles? Yep. Hey, Charles, this is Keith. I'm trying to update some paperwork here. We're doing an internal audit here for Orange County, and I have some pending paperwork for 6255 Northwest 61st Street. Then they say, yeah, that's my address. And I'm like, look, I am trying to update these records because it looks like some time ago you inquired about mortgage protection on the home loan, and we don't have any notes in our system to show what happened with that. Did anybody ever get back to you, Charles? And whatever they say, I have a rebuttal. If they say, yes, I took care of it, then I'm like, perfect. That's going to make my job a lot easier. Let me pause on that real quick. Mike, that means they're a buyer. If someone's already got insurance, your mindset is great. They believe in it. With all the options we have at FFL, more than likely, and I'm not always big on replacing, but I can possibly put them in a better spot, either cash back or living benefits or an IULE or something. We have other products that they may have gotten an insurance policy. So I try to find out who it's with and what they have, because I can possibly replace it. So I kind of ask, Mike, who's that with? And they'll tell me the company or something. You know, if it's a company we represent, I'm familiar with. Some other company, I'm like, huh. And I start monologuing. I'm like, Mike or Charles, that's why you with, you know, Banker's Life or something. And I'm like, are you sick? What's going on there? And I start putting doubt in their mind with the coverage they have. I'm like, what'd you get there? Did you get the payoff of the house? What's going on? And they kind of tell me, yeah, it was to cover the house if I die. And I'm like, okay, is there any living benefit? I'm asking them questions to cause them to think, why do they have this? So I start poking holes a little bit if they have coverage in whatever it is. I try to find out, you know, what benefits, cash back, whatever. And then I'm like, well, that's why you're in my system, Charles. That's why we need to set a meeting so we can discuss this. I need about 15-20 minutes. I might be able to put you in a better spot. If no one's ever got back to them, that's easy. No one ever got back to them. That's why you're still in my system. That's why I need to call you to go over this with you. If they say they're no longer interested, then I'm like, well, what's changed, Charles? Do you feel like you don't qualify medically? Do you feel like it's not in your budget? What's happened? You know, maybe they paid off the house. Maybe maybe someone gave them a quote and it was outside of the price range. Maybe they have some health issues and they feel like it's too expensive, whatever it is. I want to find out what's their reasoning for not having it. And then I try to book from there. Does that make sense on those rebuttals?
Absolutely.
So that's where I do for age mortgage. Now at the beginning, my tone is assertive. I have to disarm them though, is my mindset. Like they're getting calls, I'm surprised they picked up, but they're getting calls from, whatever, spam calls, whatnot. So when they pick up, and I'll call them 3 times, and I don't care if they're pissed off on the 3rd call, because when they pick up, and they're like, yeah, hello, who is this? And they get irritated. I'm like, hey, Charles. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, hey, I was trying to leave you a voice message, but I'm glad I got you. I kept getting kicked out. I never get anything from there. They don't, argue with me on that. They go, okay, who is this? What do you need? So I'm taking control of that. But also I'm saying we're doing an internal audit. All that is an update. I'm doing an internal audit because I am in my system with this paperwork that had your name on it. And I want to know, did anybody ever get back to you? So basically it's like that client or potential client and myself are both scratching our heads going, why is this doesn't make sense. Why are you in my system? Like, Charles, why are you still here? What's going on? Did anybody get back to you? Yes, no. Did you take care of it? Yes, no. What's going on? And then like I did the other call that you were on the other day, I say things like, legislation hasn't passed a law to make this mandatory, not yet anyway, like car insurance. However, the banks and lenders would prefer you have coverage like this because they don't want you to foreclose on your home and then have to do a short sale, go through probate or anything like that. So this is insurance to help protect your biggest asset and on the house, keep that roof over your head. So my job is just to make sure you got the information, make sure I put you in the best spot available for you. Or I'll say, hey, we have some new options made available. That's why I'm calling you, something along the lines like that. And I find when I first started, I would do a dial tracker. I would book, I don't know, 15 to 20% out of 100. Now I'm booking probably 1 out of every 4 if it's, a 2-year-old lead or so, just because of my experience and my energy and whatnot. But typically if I had 100 leads, I'm thinking I'm going to book 20, 25 of them, of the age leads, but not saying I'm going to close them all. But I'm a believer in this because I see what happens when you don't have it. And I find that most people, they don't know, about it until you explain why they need it. So once you get into the reasoning and have the appointment with people, it makes sense. It really does. I mean, they already pay so much on car insurance and they have to have that. But for mortgage, their house is worth probably 10 times or so what their car is worth. And, if they lose their house, what are they going to do? They're going to live in their car. So it's worth at least looking into. Does that all make sense? Got anything you want to ask or thoughts on that?
You're doing great.
When it comes to those appointments too, man, So you can get a lot of them for cheap, whether it's through CRM or through a lead vendor. So for new agents, it's good, like I said, because it gives them a lot of practice. If once you get into that too, because the value is bigger, when you're covering 100, 200, 300, 400, whatever size home or a portion of it, I find that you're dealing a lot of times with working class people. They're going to spend the money on something. You might as well show them the need of having this and the benefit of having it. Plus the living benefits, cashback options, or the IUL when they got some cash, growth options. The products really sell themselves once you can get across explaining it to people. I had $500,000 life insurance policy in my early 20s with State Farm, but it was a 20-year term. I didn't know that. I would have paid a lot of money into it, and it only paid out if I died by like 43. I got it at 23. So if someone like yourself would call me and I say, I already got it covered, man, I got $500,000. If I die, my house paid for, my funeral's paid for, but you don't pick that apart and go, well, let's talk about it. Who's that with? Is there living benefits? What happens, Keith, if you get in a car accident, or you get cancer, or you have a heart attack, but you ain't dead? That policy's not paying out unless you're dead by 43. If something happens in between there, that's where this coverage comes in. And the value, I sell value, not price. So I'm showing them what they're getting with the benefits and why mortgage protection is different than just traditional life insurance. That's just burial coverage. So
what's your go-to product on mortgage protection?
I like Americo, the HMS products, if they qualify, if they have some good health. I also like Mutual Omaha's IULE as a comparison. So I interchange those two, are like my bread and butter. Occasionally I'll go to the Home Protector with AMAM, which I don't feel as good in value, but depending on what's going on health wise, that's kind of my ABC on the products. But
can you go over your pitch when you're talking to someone and you're going to sell the CBO 100? You can tell you've been here for a while because you still call it HMS, but a lot of newer people, it's CBO 100.
So it stood for Home Mortgage Series Cashback Option is what the CBO was. But
it's all good. Go through a typical pitch on selling that product to people, because we're not selling enough CBO 100, which I think it's one of the strongest products that we have.
I know you got some hitters on here that can do it. I mean, I know Dean Pavlik will kill it with that, and you got some Hall of Fame producers. I know for me, once I go through their health, so before I get to that, let me jump in on, I like to find out, Mike, if something happened to you, let's say, and I give them a scenario. You're driving home, you pick up some groceries, at the store, and a lot of times I try to find like a local grocery area, like where they're at, so if it's Publix or Food Line or Bilo, or where you said, what'd you say you have where you're at?
Giant.
So you go by the store, you pick up something, some groceries or whatever, you're heading home, and someone runs a red light, wrecks into you. Now, I'm not speaking this on your life, but if that happened, and it's not your fault, they rear-end you, they total your car, your back's banged up, you're out of work from whatever, let's say they're a plumber, and I'm like, you're out of work, you're laid up at home rehabbing your back, you're waiting on a settlement, which could take months or years, and it takes typically about 6 months to get disability through the state. How does that affect your job? And then I let them tell me, do you have disability? Yes. Do you get 40% or 60% disability from your job? And I'm starting to give them doubt, like what happens if they get hurt. Now, I'm also painting the picture with other things, but this is how I segue into that. And I'm like, so you get an accident, you make $4,000 a month, or you net $4,000 a month, and now you're only getting 40% of that. Can you guys still pay your bills? Can y'all still pay your mortgage and all your bills? And they're like, oh, it's tight, or it'd be hard, or whatnot. And then I go, what is your fallback? Do y'all have anything that acts as insurance? And this is how you get annuities. Do y'all have anything that you can lean on that acts as insurance? Do y'all have any land, cars, assets, rental properties? And I'm finding out what assets they have so that I could find out what's my hurdle to cause them to object to getting mortgage protection. Because if I don't find out what assets someone has, Mike, then in the back, I may never know why I don't get the sale. The person may think, I don't need this insurance. F this guy. I got, $200,000 rental property. I'll just sell it and pay my bills that way. I need to know what they think is their safety net so that I can actually pull it apart. Oh, I got savings. Okay. What you got in savings? How much, how long do you think savings can last you? I got 3 months. I got 3 months of income. The guy told me he makes $4,000. So he's got roughly $12,000 in his savings account. Okay. Or I got a 401k. depending on their age. If they are 59 and a half or older, they can touch the retirement. But I picked that apart because I'm like, well, Mike, you need that for later years when you're retired. So you don't want to touch that now, you know? And if they're under 59 and a half, I'm like, dude, you get penalized and taxed and all that stuff. So you don't want to touch that. So either way, whether they can touch it or not, I take apart their retirement. That's a no-go because you need it later when you need it. They have a rental property. Well, you got tenants in there. It's a source of income, but you'd have to kick them out, plus sell the house and put it on the market. And that takes time. So time is not your ally in this scenario. So I pulled up whatever it is, whatever asset they have. But I want to find out what they have because it tells me if I can help put them into an annuity. Also, I can pull apart what asset they feel is their safety net for why they don't need insurance. So I kind of cross through all that and kind of make most of those less appealing. From there, now we're back to square one. You don't have much to lean on. You don't have a pot to pee in. You're very limited on what you have liquid assets. And I'm like, okay, well, that's the whole point. I basically get it where it boxes in. That's why they need this. I'm like, well, that's the whole point of this call, Mike. That's why you need this. Because most people, even if they have assets, it's not liquid or it's tied up or they don't want to go that route. They don't want to sell that hot rod they built with their dad or whatever it is. So I make it less appealing to go that route and where it's more appealing to go this route. So I'm like, okay, I already find out about their health, whatever. Let's say they're healthy. I go, you can get anywhere from 1 year of mortgage protection. So let's say they're paying, $1,000 a month or something. Like you can get anywhere from 12 grand to 300 grand without a physical, or 400 grand or whatever. And then I go, you owe 256 on the house, Mike. So I write that down like on a piece of paper on their lead. I'll put like an arrow 20 or 1 year to the max coverage we could do. And then I put what they owe in the middle. And I go, okay. So some people may want the full payoff. And I already know based on the person's budget, if it's affordable to get them because of, just looking at the quotes, I can do quote calculator for them while I'm talking to them. If it's not affordable for the full payoff, or I think it's going to be kind of pricey, I'll talk it down and say, Mike, you may want $1 million of coverage. You may only get 50,000, but 50,000 is better than nothing because that's going to protect your home, keep you in the house. Y'all can refinance, but that's going to keep you where you're not homeless and you're not losing the property. Does that make sense? Yeah. I'm like, I wouldn't mind driving a Ferrari. It's not practical. The whole job is to stay in your budget. So now I'm appealing to them. I'm making them feel like I'm connecting with them about the numbers, the budget. So I'm like, we got to find something that fits your budget, but also still works to get coverage. We can look at the whole payoff of 256, 300, whatever they owe. But if that's not in your budget, I'm already planting the seed that we're going to back it down to what does make sense. Okay. So we got to do something. Okay. And so I get them on board with something's better than nothing. We got to get you in place, get you approved for some coverage. We can look at the full payoff. If that's not there, we'll back it down to what makes sense. I find most times in sales, and I've been in sales like 20 years, most of the times where we miss it as a sales representative is we're not asking for their business or we're not working with them to find where that connects. People may tell you, Dean may come to a car lot and say, hey, I want that Ferrari. And they go, all right, it's 250 grand. And he doesn't want to spend more than 200 grand. So that he ain't walking off the lot. If the guy's like, well, let's scale it down to maybe a used car. Let's get you one that's maybe 2 or 3 years old that might fit more in your price. You got to work with people. And when you're talking to people, it's all about budget. And they want to feel comfortable. They want to make sure it's something they can handle monthly. So your job or our job is to still protect that family within reason. So you just got to kind of give and take. I talk about the living benefits. I actually have the coverage on me. So I'm a buyer. I'm a believer. So I'm like, look, I got coverage on me. I chose 25 years on a 30-year mortgage. I get my money back when I got it when I was 31. I get my money back when I'm 56. I tell them, like, I got 300 grand. If I have any chronic, critical, terminal condition, I get have a heart attack and die, my wife gets it. But if I have a heart attack or cancer or something, I get a stent put in, or some condition befalls me while I'm living, I get those living benefits of 300 grand while I'm alive. If I'm dead, my wife gets it. If none of that happens, then at the end of that 25-year term, when I'm 56, I get every penny I put into it back. So it's like a savings account. And they're like, well, dang, that makes a lot of sense. I'm like, yeah. So if you don't use it, you get the money put into it. You're not losing any of this, Mike. And then people are like, I'm like, so you have this coverage as a fallback. If God forbid something happens, you have it. but if you don't use it, you're getting it back. So it's a win-win. And I make them, the mentality of that makes sense for them. Plus, like I said, I go back to the car analogy. I'll ask them, I'm like, Mike, how much you pay on car insurance? And they're like, well, and they'll start thinking about combined what they're paying on their cars. I'm like, what do you think those cars are worth? Like, well, the truck's worth 15 grand, the SUV's worth 26, maybe 40 grand. And I'm like, and y'all paying $300 on car insurance for 40 grand? Your house is worth 256. And we're looking at cover, and it might be the same, or it's cheaper sometimes. I'm like, your house is worth way more than your cars, and your cars are depreciating. It makes sense to get coverage on your house because that's your asset. That's building in value. You're building equity. And then I'm like, if you lose your home, what's your backup? You're going to go live in your car? You can lose your car. You can go get an Uber to work. You can get a ride to work. You rent a car. You can go get another one, a cheaper, a little beater car, whatever. But if you lose your house, you're going to go live with your in-laws. And people are like, when they start thinking about it, it's just making sense of it for them to go, yeah, dude, I need some sort of protection. How much is up to them? I had a client, one of my clients, Mike, he owed about 250 something. He got coverage in November of that year. I think it was 2018. He ended up having a heart attack within like 6 months. He didn't die though. His wife, Linda, called me one night and woke me up middle of the night. I'm a light sleeper. And I'm like, hello. She didn't say anything. So I go to hang up. She goes, Mr. Christmas, Keith. And I'm like, yeah, Keith. She goes, Billy had a heart attack. And I'm like, oh, dang. I'm thinking he died. So I'm like, all right, wake up, like be sensitive to what's going on, try to be like there for the family. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I'm kind of like, trying to appeal to her. She steamrolls me. She goes, oh no, he's fine. He got a stent put in. He's going back to work in no time. Are we covered? And I'm like, dang, let me look. I said, yeah, y'all got like 50,000 a piece. She goes, but we owe like 250. And I go, I understand, but that's the coverage you got because that's what fit y'all's budget. He ended up getting a check for 50,000 from Americo. Wow. He went back to work in 10 days. His disability through his job, he wasn't even out long enough for it to kick in. So he gets nothing from work, goes back to work in less than 2 weeks, but he got a check for 50 grand, which he could refinance or pay down the house or whatever. But 50 grand is better than nothing. Had he had 200 grand, guess what he would have got?
Yeah.
So I say that to clients. I say that same story a lot of times to tell people, and they're like, oh, yeah, I want the full payoff, or I want, as much 75% or whatever. Sometimes they get more. I tell people, like, I got more than what I owed because I want to make sure I could pay off the truck and the house and everything if I go down. So I build the value of what it's going to do for them, but make them kind of decide where they feel comfortable at.
Heath, you talk a lot about that, the premiums that you write. I don't think people realize how large the premiums are on mortgage protection. You said this weekend you wrote, what was it, 2 deals, 3 policies, something like that, and it was what, almost 7,000?
I wrote one for 34. I didn't work Friday because I had some plans with my wife, and I don't typically work the weekends as much as I'd like to, just because of family time. I got 6 kids, guys, so they're not in school, whatever. So the weekends is for my dynamic. Weekends are great. If you can work weekends here, guys, anytime I've worked weekends, it's always been, I don't regret it for what it can do for my family and the income, and people are happy. They're off. They're ready. You can do a lot. There's people that work full-time jobs outside of FFL, like in other industries, and they'll work the weekends and kill it on the weekends because, a Saturday, you could book up a Saturday, 8-10 appointments on a Saturday, and you're going to write 10 grand, we call it weekend warrior. At least we used to call it that here. But for me, I wrote them on Thursday night, for $374 and some change a month. And that wasn't even the full payoff, but that was like 75% of the mortgage because I'm building the value. I mean, my job, Mike, or I say my job, my experience here was I wasn't your guy that was capable, due to my time constraints to run 30, 40 appointments a week. I want to. I really wish I could do those numbers. At least at this stage of my life with my children and the involvement that I have and what's going on, I have to make the schedule work for me. So I had to be efficient with the appointments I have. So if I only have 10, 15 appointments in that couple of days because the rest of my week's booked up with other, doctor's appointments, other things with kids, then I'm building value. I usually try to write a husband and a wife, or significant other, whatever their flavor is. They could be two men, 2 women, whatever. But I try to write, both people on there. I'm the breadwinner for my family, but if my wife had breast cancer, I have the same amount of coverage on her, at least for America, 300 grand on her. Cause that was the max when we got it. 300 was the max they used to offer. So I got 300 on her and 300 on me, because if she goes down, I have to take care of her. I have to put the little one in daycare or something. I'm going to use that money to take care of her. If I go down, we use that money for benefits to pay the bills and whatnot. But I say that to families too. So then usually both of them may get something. I may get full coverage on Frank, but then his wife may only get partial if that makes sense for them. Or they both get the same. It depends. Or sometimes the female is the breadwinner and they need more on the breadwinner. So she may get more and him less, but I just try to make sure it makes sense where they both get something. So a lot of appointments I get two for one, to make up for if I don't have a lot of appointments, but I build value on it and it makes sense for people.
When you
And
say that, build value, what does that mean? I remember in the beginning, Frank would say it to me all the time. I get frustrated. I was like, what the hell does that mean? When
what
you
is it
say
going to
it, what
do
does that
for you?
mean?
I mean, people are going to spend the money, Mike. I mean, you and I talked the other day. You went and got, pizza, whatever it was for dinner and y'all spent $70 or something.
The Box Hill Pizzeria crab cakes are
Yeah.
expensive.
So, I mean, we'll easily spend with my kids and stuff. I don't care if I'm door dashing, fast Chick-fil-A, it's over $100 with, with all of it. So to me, I'm not mistaken that a couple $100 is a lot of money, especially for your everyday Joe. But what are you getting out of it? So I'm building the value of what it's covering. I'm like, if you're like that family that only got 50 grand and something happens, you only got 50 grand. Now 50 grand's a lot of money too, but he could have got 200 grand by spending more money, and it's like, I tell people, I'm like, what happens if you fall off the roof and put up Christmas lights and you hurt your back? I say that this time of the year because it's that time of the year, but I say scenarios to people and say, what if you develop a chronic condition, MS or Alzheimer's or something? I have a client last week that said they're going to have to look at getting the living benefits because he does HVAC and he's starting to have like dementia or Alzheimer's, and
Oh,
it's
wow.
affecting his job. And that's what it's there for. It's a chronic condition that's affecting his day-to-day stuff. So building value of what it is, and really for most people, when you take away what they don't have, like if they don't have that safety net, which most people don't, I don't care what they're living. I had a lady, she makes 20 grand a month as a nurse. She's a traveling nurse. She goes, I'm contract. She goes, I make bank. And I'm like, yeah, it made great money. She goes, but if I get sick or hurt, she goes, I got nothing. And I'm like, and I say that to people. I even use her as an example. I'm like, because COVID happened. And a lot of people, they waited tables or they were an Uber driver or something. I had an Uber driver who's making $8,800 a month. An old man retired. His wife died. So he just Ubers all over New Orleans, Louisiana, makes 8-9 grand a month. But when COVID happened, less people were comfortable getting in cars with a stranger. So taxi service and service industry jobs like waitresses and hairstylists and stuff, they took a hit. So you can make good money until you don't. So I'm like, when something happens and that's taken away from you because of a health condition or something, and I relate because I told you I had surgery where they had to cut open my neck because they found something in my neck. It was benign. But if that would have been something serious, I have this coverage. And I say things like that builds value when people realize, man, I'm an accident or sickness or something away from taking me out. You were sick recently, you told me, and you're like, man, I was on my butt. And that happens. Viral things happen. So when you can relate and appeal to people, it builds the value when you're talking about, if you don't have this, what's your fallback? That's what you have to do, is you have to paint the picture, whether it be an accident or sickness or something. What does that look like when Frank can't work? And then they go, my wife works. I mean, she brings in this. And I'm like, what happens if both y'all go on a date and some drunk driver wrecks into y'all? It's not your fault, but neither one of y'all can work. How does that affect your job? Or y'all come down, like I had friends that died of COVID. Like, what happens if you're in a hospital on a ventilator trying to survive this new strand of whatever? And I'm not, but I'm like, you say things that people go, yeah, I don't know, man. What would I do? And I'm like, that's why we got this. That's why you have these living benefits. That's the whole point of this call. And I'd say probably half the time, Mike, they say that to me. They go, well, that's the whole point I'm talking to you, because I need this. After I've gotten to that point, they're like, well, that's why we're talking. And I'm like, all right, now let's just find where that fits. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. We got a couple more minutes left. Tell me about what you're seeing with the new type of leads now. You said your biggest problem was with mail, it was up and down, but now with the new social media mortgage protection leads, what are you finding with that now?
My experience from it, I ordered 50 my last batch, and I ended up getting 62, and I had the first 15 I got a hold of. I can tell you the numbers. The first 15 I ended up talking to, and I booked, let me pull it up, I'll tell you. I had 62 leads. I spoke to 15 because they're all over the country, these leads that I was doing. I had 3 no-show appointments. I
Out
had
of
1
15.
dropped call. I had 1 that was not interested. I had 1 of those 15 that had cancer and it was no sell. They were too young to get AIG. I had 1, I was doing an application, they got kicked out, and I didn't pivot yet because to a different carrier because I had other appointments, and I wanted to kind of, I said, when you get your letter in the mail telling you what it is, we'll look at something. I have 2 more appointments. I wrote 6 for 12,668. I have 28 in states that I'm not licensed in that I'm still working because I can write the
Wait a minute,
coverage.
you wrote 12,000 what?
668.
How many policies was that?
6.
Frank, there you go.
28 hadn't called because there were states that I wasn't licensed in. Five of the 62 were not in service or the numbers were disconnected. You're going to have that in leads, guys, with whatever sort. I don't care if it's a mailer. You're going to have some that the number doesn't work. It could be a $74 mailer. It could be a $5 final expense lead. It doesn't matter. You're going to have that in the numbers just because that's the reality of the business we're in. And I had 14 that I called and didn't reach. I left a voice message or text. So out of 62, I wrote 6. So not even, that's what, 10%. And I still have 28, 38, 41 of them I still have to work through of the 62.
So really out of the 15, you wrote 6 and you're at 12,000. Someone just asked where social media leads. If you go into the ILC, we're so used to clicking internet, but if you drop down to social media, inside the social media leads, there are mortgage protection for $31. There's some in there for 15, 10 goes down to 5, and then there's some IUL leads in there as well. But I think now the people that are, creating these mortgage, I think they've like figured it out now. And based off of your numbers, I would definitely say so.
Well, here's my mentality, guys, on any lead source. I don't care, final expense, whatever you're doing. Usually one sale with the way we get paid here, I don't care if you're at a 70% comp. One sale is going to typically pay for the whole batch. So and it's all numbers. So you have a better chance. John Wetmore taught me this. You have a better chance with the volume, the numbers, the more numbers. If you could get 50 appointments, you have a better chance than 25 because you don't have to close as well. You could be terrible at this. I'll say this. There's a guy in the company, I don't want to say his name because both of y'all know him. I went to a training in Atlanta, like my 3rd month in or something. And they had this guy come up and speak. And they had the banner, for the FFL logo, whatever. And the guy was kind of trailing back behind the banner in front of like 200 people. He was like stage fright or something. And I'm like looking around going, who is this guy? And he was saying a lot of the cliche sayings like, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed and stuff like that without finishing it. He's like, I'm not the sharpest tool where the tools go. And he was saying things, I'm a few fries short of the deal. And I was like, man, he almost like Joe Biden with some of his mannerisms. And I'm over there going, who is this guy? And he goes, look, they go, what time do you get to the office? He goes, 7 a.m. They go, what time do you leave? And he goes, 8. And I go, this guy works an hour. And he goes, PM. He goes, I'm not very good. And he goes, and I look like a serial killer. And I said in the back of the room, I go, yep. And everyone turned around laughing. He goes, yeah, I'm scary looking. If I door knock you, you're not going to open the door. And I'm like, I'm probably going to pull out a gun or something. This guy comes to my house, And he said, but I set me 40 appointments a week because I'm not very good. But I know out of the 40, statistically in insurance industry, if I keep the appointments, you sell 1 out of every 4. Like 25% is considered a lay down. So you don't have to be very good. You just get in the lay downs. The people who you just happen to be the one sitting in front of them. And he understood that. And they said, how much did you issue pay last year? And this was in 2017. The guy goes, it's like 300 something thousand. And I go, this guy, and I'm not trying to be judgmental, guys. I love all people, but I was like, they need to have this guy at every training, because I was like, if this guy's doing over 300K, and he goes, and he sometimes he had trouble putting sentences together, but yet he understood the work ethic. This guy would most of this group, including myself, outwork us, and probably everyone on this call might be more talented and have more charisma, maybe better looking, but this guy's work ethic was just doing circles around me and a lot of other people, because he's like, he knew the numbers. If you guys set the numbers and you put in and you're betting on yourself, and you're like, hey, I'm going to buy X amount of leads, it's a numbers game. And if you just hammer the phones, I don't care, how long you get to do it, but if you hammer the phones to get you your appointments, the numbers work out. I can't tell you why or how, but if you have the numbers on your side, the law of averages, or the law of big numbers, you're going to write 10 plus K a week, because you have the appointments. You can't, you fall into it. If every 10 appointments that you sit and you sold 2 or 3 of them, statistically, that to me, that's not very good. But in baseball, if you're hitting 300, you're an all-star, you're a Hall of Famer. So if you sold 3 out of every 10 appointments, you're going to, and say on an average sale, we say what, 1,100 at least is what it used to be. That's 3,300 minimum. And if it's mortgage protection, it's probably higher. But so look, you sell, 3 of every 10, you set you 30 appointments, you're writing 10K easy a week, because the numbers. And I will say this too, Mike, I know we're going long on this, but I remember Zach Twardowski. I helped train Zach when he first came on. I was here a little bit longer than him, but Zach surpassed me. You know why? He's awesome. He's a beast. Work ethic is one of them. Easton Padden, he got him on track with the work ethic, just the numbers. Easton's numbers, close percentage wasn't always that high, but the dude outworked everybody. If you look at his numbers, you'd go, man, he only closed 8 of 40. Dude would work, because I'm like, who's got that many appointments? He just worked. He built the value, and he sold the ones he could sell, and dude would be putting up 700-800K a year. But Zach, I remember first time I did final expense, I was doing mortgage. He did final expense. He was heading out of town, and he goes, man, I just ordered these 20 final expense leads. And he asked if I wanted them. It was on a Monday. I bought the leads from him. They had just come in over the weekend. There was 4 of them were in states like New York or something I wasn't licensed in. So I had 16 that were local leads. I called him that Tuesday morning. At 10 o'clock, I called Zach, and I wanted to wring his neck. And I go, Zach, I was like, dude, I booked 1 appointment. I was like, these leads are trash. They suck. Why did I buy them from you for $600 or $800, whatever I spent? And he's laughing at me, and he goes, dude, it's only 10 o'clock. You've only called them. I called each one of them 3 times a row, like we've trained to do. And they suck. And he goes, dude, you have to call these people sometimes 4 rounds of 3, like 12 times, By the time it was done, Mike, I had booked 8 of the 16, and these were final expense leads, and I ended up selling like 14,000 and something. But that morning, I was like, dude, I'm broke. This sucks. I just bought these leads for $800, and they're not worth it. Whatever lead y'all have, you work them. You call them in the morning. It may not work. Maybe you have to call them between 5 and 7 p.m. I remember one time I called for 6 hours, the most of 6 hours. I might have been distracted in the office, whatever, but I was in the office for 6 hours, and I booked 5 appointments in 6 hours. And I was like, dude, this is trash. I can't make it in this business. That evening, I called from 5 to 5:45 and booked 8 appointments. Now I had 13, but I booked more in 45 minutes than I did the whole day.
It happens.
You have to find and we all go through it. But if you work the numbers, you're going to have it. Galatians 6:9, I'm going to quote this in scripture, says, do not grow weary in doing good, for in due time you'll reap a harvest if you do not give up. Galatians 6:9. If you don't give up, guys, what that means is if you keep grinding, the results will come, but you have to keep putting in the effort and not throwing the towel. And that was one thing with me. I've had a lot of ups and downs in this business, but if I keep grinding, the results are there. So
Frank was looking for a specific Bible quote today. Frank, did you get your answer on that? Keith might know it. Frank, you're muted. He asked something. I forgot what it was. You're muted, Frank.
I have a theology degree, so that's kind of my background for
Yeah,
this.
I don't remember what we were talking about, but it'll come to me.
It was
I'm sure.
something about, Frank asked about a Bible quote. If someone rolled some debt and didn't pay it, was there a quote about stealing from people? Was that
Yeah, there's plenty of them.
Well, there's plenty of quotes about stealing.
yeah. Well, the Bible says like the slave is or the lender is a slave to the master. You know, like if someone's borrowing from you, they're a slave to who they, you know, if you're lending to them.
Forgot
But
what
you know,
Thou shalt not steal. Like
that there you go. I mean, there you go. That's scripture right there. About stealing though, or rolling up debt. I think that I mean, Jesus even told the disciples, he said, render to Caesar what is Caesar's, render to God what is God's, when it came to like taxing. So I mean, I believe that when you're if somebody's going and basically rolling up debt or whatnot, that's on them. You know, it says be a good steward of what you've been entrusted. You know, I'll say this, and I've read this the other day, and there's a we take this term from scripture, talent, the word talent, in the English, what we translate it to, but it was a form of monetary value. And Jesus told the story, and I'll sum it up, but there was 3 guys and there was a master going out of town. And so he entrusted 3 guys to basically run his compound, his business. And he gave one of them $5 million, one of them 2, one of them 1. And the first one went out there and doubled it. You know, he turned that 5 to 10. The next one, same thing, that 2 to 4. The third one took his money and buried it. He's like, nah, I'm not going to lose it or whatever. So when the master came back from his trip, the business owner comes back. He goes, Mike, you turn that 5 million to 10 million, everything I have, you're a partner, equal partner to me, man. Everything you did, because you're good and faithful partner, everything I have is yours. Frank, you turn that 2 into 4, same thing, brother. I'm going to bless you because you blessed me. Third guy, Keith, you buried it. He goes, you're a fool. You could have put it in the bank and got interest. You could have grown it. You could have done something to invest what you've been given. And he says, now you get nothing, and he kicked him out. What that, for us, how that translates to us is you got to be a good steward of what you have. And if someone's rolling up debt or someone's not working in this industry, I feel like if we all, whether you believe in God or not, if God's real and you go make your maker and you're like, man, I was broke or I was struggling, it's like, well, you had this opportunity. You had this phenomenal opportunity where you're a licensed professional, you're a financial professional because you handle your own bills. So I think you could tell every client, hey, I'm a financial professional, or I have a background in finance. You don't have to have a degree, but you can say I have a background in finance because you handle your own finances. And you go, so I'm going to help you fit your budget and work that out. You're building trust. So if you sell an annuity or an investment or any kind of transactional business like we do, then people trust you because you're established and you're credible to do that. But I find if we're bearing that ability or we're not taking advantage of it, I think we're foolish. If you're not taking advantage of an opportunity like we have here, you know, you're going to go wait tables. You're going to go, you know, there's my brother owns a tree company, and there's guys out there that laborers, tree climbers, dangerous work, you know, chainsaws, climbing trees. Dude, they don't make 250, 300. His climber makes like $300 a day, and he's working 10-hour days. And I'm like, get out of here. That to me, 300 is 300. Don't get me wrong. I'm not discrediting that. But I'm like, the type of labor and work intensive and the danger factor. And I'm like, you're going to go grind and do that. I'm like, nah, man, I'd rather take it easy and do what we do here, because we're helping families just like he's helping families with cutting trees down or whatever. But the upside for us is it's less dangerous and there's a lot more profitability to it for us. So.
Absolutely. Keith, well, I appreciate you being on our call tonight, man. Thank you so much. People are asking for your script. If you have that written down, if you could email that over to me so I can send it out to people.
For the age leads, age mortgage.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you could send that over, I appreciate it. Thank you, guys. We'll see you guys next Monday. Let's crush it this week. Take care.
Thanks.